what's the choice you're gonna make?
Yeah. My eyes open to a packed battlefield. Through the haze I saw guns, grenades, and shattered steel. A girl in the fray made her way through the field. Place a rose in the shields. Cause we choose love. We choose to be above the clenched teeth. Shrill screams breaking out across.
Today on the Changeville podcast, we're talking with activist, nonprofit leader, and rapper Ahmen. Ahmen is a New York-based MC who uses his platform to inspire, impact, and engage. He's been identified as a rising star by New York nonprofit media, being named one of their 2015 40 Under 40. If you attended the Frank Gathering in Gainesville in 2016, you'll surely remember his talk, The Troublemaker Imperative. We're honored to have Ahmen on the show today. How you doing today, Ahmen?
Doing beautiful, man.
So thanks again for taking some time out of your day to talk with us. I imagine that you've got a lot going on as Chief Development Officer and Senior Vice President of Sheltering Arms. Can you tell our listeners about Sheltering Arms and your work there?
Yeah, definitely. So what we do is we work in some of New York's highest need, most disenfranchised communities and under-resourced communities to help to lift people out of poverty. And to be able to maximize their potential. And we do that in myriad ways. We provide education, youth development, and well-being programs serving 24,000 youth and families a year. And, what's distinctive about us is we're a very compassionate organization. We pride ourselves in operating like your neighbors, almost like your family members, while also being incredibly innovative because we recognize that if somebody's going to be lifted out of poverty and break this vicious cycle that far too many families are victimized by, you can't just do the same old work, right? You've got to be pushing the envelope if you're going to be able to move the needle. And with that, we provide innovative early childhood education programming. We're among the first in the city to be a part of the Juvenile Justice Reform Initiative here. We're among the first to be able to provide results-proven community violence prevention programming. So there are a number of things that we've done here to be able to help people to feel like they have their power again, to feel like they have their voice again, to have some hope for the future. And we work alongside some incredible people and organizations to make that happen. That said, the work continues to charge forward. The train is picking up speed. Coming off of the election, of course, many people in our sector and in our organization were down, but I feel like our work is needed more than ever. So this is almost a renewed call to action for myself and people who are involved in this sector. And, this is not the time to back down. This is the time to stand up and to be aggressive and aspirational what we can achieve.
Wow. Yeah. See, that's amazing to hear. This is what we're talking about at Changeville when we talk about artists who are actively engaged in making the world a better place. Your heart shines through in your work, but it also carries through in what you do as the Troublemaker In Chief. I see the hashtag Troublemaker campaign. Where did that come from?
At a very personal level, I think about this journey that's brought me to where I am right now, and just the countless people who told me that, when I'd voice up about some form of inequity or doing something that's out of the norm, the people essentially just kind of labeled me as a troublemaker, like, hey, you're not supposed to be doing that. This isn't the right time or place to be talking about those types of issues. And hey, this is just the way that things are. And what I realized is that if I'm ever going to just maximize who I can be, I just had to be fully comfortable with who I am and not just try and conform to some of those antiquated beliefs and expectations that are out there. And so with that, I said, you know what? I'm being called a troublemaker. You know what? That's what I am. I'm going to be a troublemaker because if I'm operating in these different systems of inequity that have just been failing people for far too long, and you can run that list for a long time, right? You think about different issues in the corporate world and issues of income inequality and what's happening with our climate and environment and so on and so forth. We need trouble in those systems because they've been failing us for far too long in the way that things are being operated right now. So I think that I needed to be a troublemaker if I'm ever going to be able to move the needle for myself and for others. And I think other people need to embrace the inner troublemaker too, man. I was just talking with somebody at a conference down in D.C. a couple of days ago, and, she works in a foundation that's been around for a long time. They've been doing some good work. And, she pushes people in that organization to think about analytics and to think about outcomes and how can you represent the impact of the work that you're doing. And she told me she's frequently labeled as a troublemaker. Like, hey, like, here we go again. Here she comes into the room, asking about numbers. Well, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing, right? Like, so it's not like it's a problem that just happens to be out in the corporate world. Like, even within the social impact sector, people aren't always comfortable with that form of change, but it's necessary. Like, this is what we need to do if we're going to move forward. So, that person I was talking with, I said, yeah, embrace that troublemaker ideology, like, because people need it. They may not be ready for it, but they're going to jump on board. They're going to jump on board when they realize just how important it is and how it's going to be able to benefit them too.
How can we in our day-to-day lives be that troublemaker?
I think that it starts with just embracing some form of frustration that you might have. And we all have it, right? And it could just be related to our own personal lives. It could be related to something that is broader, something that's a little bit more collective. I think there's just so many great examples out there of people who embrace some form of frustration and then just decided to do something within the context of where they're operating. That in itself is being a troublemaker. That in itself is being a change maker and being able to advance some sort of a positive cause that maybe wasn't there before, but people were feeling a need for it. So that's what I encourage people to think about is embrace that frustration, something that you're unhappy with, and just make a choice to just do something, do something, take some sort of action, take some sort of a step. And if you don't even know what that step is, do some research on the web to find other people, other organizations who share that frustration with you. If you feel like there's a problem with civics education or political discourse, do some Googling and say, what are the organizations that are out there that are doing something about political discourse, that are doing something about conflict resolution in schools, and you are going to find people out there who are doing it. So sometimes being a troublemaker is as simple as supporting somebody else who's doing the work already, because then you can scale something that's proven to be effective, and you can then be a part of a movement that is going to make radical change.
That's so inspiring, and I so relate to that. I never heard the term embrace the frustration, but I mean, that's exactly what it is. When you bring people together, it's because we're all embracing the same frustration and see the change that needs to be made and work together towards that end goal. So I love that. Personally, I love that phrase, and I'm writing it down to kind of keep it as a mantra in the back of my mind.
Sure.
Given that Changeville is both social change but also music related, I wanted to ask, I don't see too many MCs out there who do both what you do as a nonprofit leader, but also spit bars. How have you navigated those two paths?
It's at this point now where the two sides need each other, right? And the way that I describe myself a lot is as the Batman of social impact, with my Bruce Wayne side, my day job being the work that I'm doing in the social impact sector, and my Dark Knight side being hip hop. And I have this common mission, this common purpose of course, being a troublemaker, but trying to spark people, trying to catalyze people to go out, to use their voice and to use their action for positive change. Now, that happens through different contexts, right? On the social impact side, of course, there's the work that's happening on the ground, which needs to occur and needs to be scaled, but there also needs to be a cultural shift, right? Like, there needs to be a change in norms. There needs to be a change in our beliefs in terms of the work that needs to be done and our beliefs on what's actually possible. And I think hip-hop is one of the best ways to make that happen because, with hip-hop, you have this universal language, which is music. And, what hip-hop has been able to do for me is it's brought me to places, all over the country to be able to share these ideas, to be able to share these messages. Like I said, I was just in D.C., You mentioned Frank. I was in Florida earlier this year. I've been in Chicago. I've been out in California, Boston. I mean, name it. I've been there. Then, of course, you've just got, a podcast like this, which can be heard by people across the world. That's what music can do for people, right? It can break through so many different barriers. So you've got these two sides of me that need each other now in order to be able to advance this broader cause. With that, I think just opportunities just start to open up. At first, it was sort of like the scary thing, to be able to go all in on this area that I'm just so passionate about, being music, or even to switch from, I was previously in the corporate world, to go into nonprofit. But now the universe, starts to open up these different pathways for you when you're doing something that you're passionate about, and if it's for some sort of greater good. And, I'm able to talk with people now that I never would have imagined to be able to connect with, and be able to go to events and perform for people in ways that I never thought would have been possible. But it happens, I think, just because of going all in and because of that commitment.
For the listeners at home, this is a phone interview, and you can't see me, but I'm pumping my fists over here because I'm so right there with you. When you follow your heart, when you follow that passion, the universe tends to open doors,
Oh, yeah. And it may not always be immediate, right? That doesn't discount just how scary it is. And, Like I'm still in this place where a lot of times I'm trying to create new things, like new partnerships, new opportunities, and it doesn't always work out. Like I think that when you go onto this path of the unknown, this path of pursuing your passion and what you believe in, it's a path that comes with rejection. It's a path that comes sometimes with isolation. It's definitely a path that comes with sacrifice. Mm-hmm. But the highs that come with it, the peaks are just so incredible that's where you get your fuel. Like that just keeps pushing you to go forward. When I have a conversation like this, this sparks me, to know that there are like-minded people who are out there who believe in our collective potential for change and believe in just taking some form of action to be able to create a better life for ourselves and the people around us. That's a spark for me, man. Like this is something that I'll carry with me for a long time and will just continue to push me to do more.
This is something I think that can be applied to any kind of entrepreneur, any kind of socially minded person, any kind of activist, any artist. Recently, I heard a quote specifically for going into business, but again, I think the concept carries over. You go into business for one of three reasons, and that's 1, to get rich, or 2, to become famous, or 3, to change the world. Based on both of our experiences, based on what you've told me, based on what I know my experience has been, when you're changing the world, it's like you said, it's hard. There's a lot of work to it. There's a lot of grind and dedication, but those highs, when you do feel like your voice is being heard and you are actually able to embrace that frustration and change the world in even a small way, it is completely fulfilling. Kind of shifting gears a little bit. When and why did you start rapping?
Man, I wish I could even just put a date on it, right? Or even a time frame. I mean, this is something that's just been a part of who I am, like, since I was a kid, since I was 9, 10, 11 years old. And, I don't know, I mean, the hip-hop, like, I just always just gravitated towards it, right? And when I was young, I moved around a lot. I'd make friends in one area and quickly move to somewhere else, maybe even across the country. I spent my last 2 years of high school in India. Like, my constant was always, was hip-hop, right? Like, hip-hop was always there for me. Like, it was always this voice, this soundtrack that I was able to come back to that could speak to just, like, how I was feeling at different times. The times where maybe I was more energized, or the times where I felt, more like a loner, and everything in between. Hip-hop was always there for me. And originally, like, I would just start playing around, just with friends, and we might write our own stuff, or, we try and, do like our own karaoke versions of, like, different songs as we were growing up. And, when I got into college, and started to discover my own voice and who I wanted to be and the type of impact I felt like I could have in this world, then it was like, all right, you know what, like, I've got this art form that has been this crucial part of my fabric for so long. It's time for me to make it my own. So it was in college when then I started to make my own music. And, for a long time, it was just sort of for the fun of it, right? Like, I even put out, like, some smaller albums along the way. And then it was only a few years ago where I was like, man, like, this is something that I love, that people have responded positively to. And there's so much that needs to be said, I think, through music right now. There's just so much in my life, so much in just the world around me that I'm observing, that I'm a part of, that I think needs to be expressed through hip-hop. So it was really just a couple of years ago where I fully dedicated myself, and I said, I'm going to go all in on this. Like, not only am I going to continue to work hard at it to get better, but I'm going to share it with people. I don't want this music to just be for me and to be my own hobby, but it needs to be for everybody else. And I think this last album I just did, which came out now about 3 months ago, is, like, I think the perfect representation of that.
It's our time, and we made it through all the hatred.
I'm staring at the pages blank, hesitating, pen shaking in my hand like, man, how to say this? I'm manic and I'm waiting for a ray of inspiration. The words just hang, but soon I get to painting. The canvas is the planet. I could be the David while Goliath is the giant. The source of all the painting, I'm done with all the blaming. I named the chapter change and dedicate remaining ages to a brand of troublemaking. Yeah, I was so frustrated, underestimated, been suffocated. They thought that I was jaded, ranked as a layman. Gotta prove I'm underrated, bang, resuscitated. Dissection is the thanks. Haters get a foot, no potential in my window. You're my motivation. Feel the records breaking, rich or poor in.
This album is called If Not Now Then When. This is an album for all of us. Like, right now, in this moment, I think this is the definitive 2016 soundtrack. and going into 2017 too. It's meant to represent who we are, what we're facing right now, and I'm proud of this journey.
It's funny because in my notes I have here about your new album that the name really resonates with where we are right now in our country. Mm-hmm. You took the words out of my mouth. Where did the inspiration behind the project come from?
You can almost look at just about anything that we might be like seeing or feeling in the media, right? But if I drill it down to a more personal level, I've just come across so many people, friends, family, colleagues, who again, going back to the idea of embracing frustration, right, who are feeling some sort of frustration in their life or in society. You've got the people who are feeling like, I was just talking with a friend yesterday who's in the field of accounting, right, and he's like, I want to be able to do a little bit more. Like, I want to do a little bit more community work, but I also want to have some stability in my life. I also want to be able to put food on the table, and, maybe this is a safe route, but I want to be able to give back, and I'm not entirely sure to do that, right? So there are people who feel that, with their own personal lives. You've got the people who are like, I love doing music. I'd love to be able to be an entrepreneur, but, I'm not sure if I can. Like, people are telling me that's not the smart move. That's not the safe move. I don't know what step to take. Like, I'm scared. I'm afraid of, what might happen if it doesn't work out. And then at a broader level, you got the people who are upset about the election, upset about the candidates, upset about race relations, police brutality, the state of our climate, the unlevel playing field for girls and for women. You've got all these different issues that people are feeling, and then you compound that with the feeling of, can we do something about it, right? Like, I don't know if I can do something about it. So, like, I've been hearing these really powerful stories for months, years now, and I felt like, like, I think I just need to make music that represents how so many of us are feeling, but to not just make it like this like statement on, okay, here are the difficulties and that's it, but to make it something a little bit more aspirational, right? Because for all those stories that I hear about of people who are feeling some frustration, of people who are feeling like, I don't know if there's anything I can do about it, I hear countless more of the people who are stepping forward and going all in on their passion, or the people who are trying to make some sort of positive change happen, and they are seeing the dividends of that. And that's something that's just so awesome for me, being in the social impact world and being a hip-hop artist, as I'm exposed to so many of those incredible stories. I see all these stories, man, so I can't be told that, positive change isn't possible, man. I can't be told that, because I've seen it happen time and time again, and that's what the album needed to represent. Like, not just sitting back and being like, oh man, like I'm pissed off, man, I'm angry. Yeah, people are feeling that, true, and let's express that. But more importantly, we're frustrated, we're angry, we're upset, but here's what we can do about it, and we can and we should do something about it, and that's what the album is, and that's why it's called If Not Now, Then When.
I keep running at the wall. Will I break through or will I fall? I'm the strongest alive, the status of a gladiator, last standing man. Ain't a failure, challenge slayer, are you not entertained? And you said what doesn't kill me makes me greater attain the highest levels as a legend escalated through pain. But if I'm destined for fame, why's it feel like 0 seconds remain? When I'm staring out the space, lonely on the stage, is my hope my only weapon? Do I fold a second guessing? I'll be ripping these records for half of my life, rocking out prophets for a third of my life, speaking so honest every moment I get, running through walls, I'm soaked in sweat. Rejection isn't all for every one of those steps, and a hurdle hold me down, and every one of those steps could turn to the sand, but I asked for this burden, so I burned to go again. Hear cracks and it happens, make grads of the poor kids, make fans with the onus, use votes as a planter, say the man so a girl could match man. Anyway, we the chosen, shake hands and we broke it, crash down, stand tall and advance to impact.
Hearing If Not Now, Then When. As a Gainesville native, I love seeing the features on this record. A couple of tracks feature Faye from Flatland, a Gainesville-based band, and Ahmen. How did that relationship come about?
Oh, man, going back to the idea of music being this universal language, right? So I went to the Frank conference earlier this year, planning to perform Our Time. It was going to be the first time that anybody heard this song, and I knew it could be something that could be special and could spark people to think about taking action, for positive change. And, the song, the original version of it has this incredible R&B singer by the name of Joss J on it. She wasn't able to make it out to Florida. And, I'd mentioned to the organizers, like, hey, it'd be great if we can get a singer to be on it. They're like, yep, absolutely makes sense. We'll try and make it happen. So they found Faye and Ahmen, who are local there. I didn't know who they were before it. They met, I think, a week before the event. Both happened to be violinists too, so they started to come up with some arrangements. I talked to Faye briefly on the phone the week of the event, like, hey, let's just get acquainted. Here's what I want you to do. All right, cool, whatever. We meet at the event straight up like 2 hours before we're about to go on the stage. And this is the power of music, right? Like, we just got in the room and just got to work, like, just started practicing. Like, they, like, I showed them how I planned on performing and delivering it. Like, they ran through their parts of it and singing the hook and, like, showing me this violin arrangement, which I never even thought of for the song, but it just sounded absolutely incredible to layer that on top of the song. Both of them have just these powerful and very unique voices. And then we went out and performed it, a couple hours later. And a story I just love sharing with people, man, is like there were people coming up to me who were like, I'm not a hip-hop fan. Like, I'm a rock person, I'm a country person, but, that absolutely moved me. And, I feel inspired to be an activist now. There were people who came up literally with tears, streaming down their cheeks, saying, like, they just felt so inspired and so captivated by what we had just presented to them. And they felt like, yeah, like, this really is our time. Like, there's such an imperative for us to go out and take action. So, I took that with me and I said, like, I just got to recreate that magic, So on the album, there's a couple of tracks where I felt like, I need to have, some of those dynamic voices on it to help give it a different sense of life. So I reached out to Faye and Ahmen and, they share the beliefs that you and I are talking about here, man. Like, they believe in using music as its power and force for good. And they were 100% with it. But I'm fortunate I didn't have to convince them to do it. Like, they were game, they were on it. They wrote the hooks, they put violin arrangements on top of those two songs. And I think both of them, Breaking Point and Team, turned out to be these really incredible, I feel like, just like soundscapes for this powerful, deep range of emotions that people are feeling, which are expressed through those two different songs.
So I know you just put out an album, but I know artists like yourself are always working on the next thing. Do you have any other projects that you can talk about that you're working on right now?
Oh, for sure, man. For sure. I mean, new music is always a part of what I'm doing. I love being able to collaborate with new artists, coming up with remixes for different songs and so on. But right now, my mission, my purpose is activating people. And, we talked about it, like, what people are feeling like right now coming off of the election. I feel this like fire right now to make sure that people are not just sitting back and feeling unhappy, but that they take that feeling, that set of emotions, and they do something with it. So, with that, being able to go to conferences like the one I just went to in D.C., the New Frontiers Conference, and connecting with, over 100, nonprofit social impact leaders, and being able to spread that message even more to say that, hey, like, you need to be fired up. You need to go out and continue to change this world and feel even more urgency to do it. So doing events like that one are, is very much a priority, very much on my radar. Connecting with new potential partners is something that I'm working on also. I want to be able to take this work, take my music, and help it to be applicable for specific groups and people and populations. For instance, something I'm looking at for 2017 is actually partnering with schools here in New York to do a pilot project where we take some of the music that I've been doing, like Our Time and We Choose Love, and help kids to actually be able to own it and to be able to dissect it and to then produce what Our Time and We Choose Love means for them. So I think that the music can not only just be this like soundtrack for people, but actually be a tool for people. So that's something I'm gonna start working on in 2017. In addition to more events, man, I have a couple of shows lined up in New York. In December, I'm planning a mini East Coast tour in February. One thing I'm really excited about is I want to do an Inauguration Day event in New York on January 20th. I think people are going to be feeling some pretty heavy emotions that day, man. And I think a lot of them are unfortunately going to be not so positive. So I want this event to be a very positive event. I want it to be an event about action. I want it to be an event about change. So I want to bring together different organizations and movements and leaders, speakers, poets, artists. And, we're going to do something special here in New York. So if anybody's listening to this and they want to be involved in that on January 20th, definitely reach out. I think it's going to be a pretty memorable event.
So before we wrap it up, I have two questions I want to ask you. one. If you had to recommend one song to our listeners to go listen to that will either change their lives or blow their minds, what would that one song be?
You know, I would love to be self-serving and tell people, you know, just press a random on my on my album. You know, I think, of course, you know, we've been talking about Our Time. I think that's something that's very relevant right now. And, you know, there's a great video that I was able to produce and put out there, which actually features a number of different social impact leaders around the country in the video, so you can see what Our Time actually means. That said, you know, just this morning as I was on my way into work, you know, I was thinking about, you know, just what are the different causes that I need to be prioritizing right now, you know, beyond this idea of civic engagement, of committing to be a troublemaker. And, you know, I'm listening on my iPod, and one of my favorite songs of all time comes on, and it's Change Is Gonna Come by Sam Cooke. And, you know, I think that might be the one that I recommend to people right now. You know, I kind of posted about this right after the election, the day after the election, about just like the power of the journey that we're on right now, the beauty of it, the struggle of it, that, you know, if we're working in this imperfect system with imperfect lives, and we can't expect it to be perfectly linear, you know, there's going to be ups and downs along the way. But if you commit, then you can open up the door to just incredible life-changing things. And I think that song, to me, represents that journey really well. The idea that a change is going to come, and so that you've got to keep at it, man. You've got to keep taking one step at a time. And, you know, we'll get the change that we want, the change that we deserve, if we fully commit that way. So I think that's the song, man. Sam Cooke, A Change Is Gonna Come.
And my last question. If a listener to this podcast wants to support the mission of Sheltering Arms, where would they do that? And if they want to hear more of your music, where would they do that?
Yeah, well, you know, if somebody wants to support Sheltering Arms, man, that'd be a beautiful thing. So I definitely say go to the website, shelteringarmsny.org, and learn more about the incredible work we're doing across the city. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to talk a little bit more about it and see how you could potentially get involved. And then for checking out my music, go to my website, ahmen.us, ahmen.us. Listen to the music, check out the events that I'm going to be doing, you know, some of the things that I've written or stuff that's been written about me, and get in touch by social media. You know, I pride myself in being, you know, relatively easy to connect with, because I'm always looking to drive more partnership and to actually be there for people and to be able to help out. So hope that this is the first of many conversations for people that, you know, who are paying attention right now.
Any last thoughts?
You know, last thoughts? Hey, man, I mean, thanks for the time, you know, for being able to have this type of discussion. You know, I think that all of us have a lot to just get off our chest, get off our minds, and it's good to be able to have this type of discussion. And you know what? I 100% applaud you for what you're doing. You know, the idea of Changeville, the idea of bringing pause and music together, I think is just so critical, man, because we have this incredible potential to be able to tap into how people are feeling right now through the arts, and to be able to shift the conversation to one that is more productive and one that's more hopeful. And I think that you're playing a critical role in making that happen. So keep at it. And, you know, we're going to see some beautiful things happen if we commit to this work.
Well, thank you so much to our guest, Ahmen. We'll be back in a couple weeks with another episode of the Changeville podcast. Until then, check out our website or Facebook page. We just dropped the initial lineup for Changeville 2017, and tickets are going fast. Until next time, this is Brandon, signing out.
Yeah. Another brother lost, twilight for another in the war. Use of force is a norm, where to find rights that we might fight.